Hello, welcome back to part 2 of the audio lecture over Chapter 11, Adolescence. Let's look at the consequences and timing of puberty. The earlier a boy matures, generally that's a positive experience for them. Think about it, their muscle mass increases faster, their voice lowers, they get taller, and as they're bulking up, coaches are paying more attention to them, their status increases, they get more attention from others, social attention. Generally, that's experienced as an increase in popularity and therefore has a positive impact on self-esteem. Now, the payoff is while they're engaged in extracurricular activities and more social relationships, their academics sometimes take a back seat, and there's been some research that points to a positive correlation between early maturation, physical maturation in boys and later delinquency. Maybe they're, we've got a 14-year-old boy hanging out with 18-year-old young men, getting them into a little bit of trouble that they're not quite ready for. Early maturation for females can be difficult. The story that comes to mind is I was walking by my sister's room back when she was probably 14 or 15 years old. And although I was mean to her sometimes, I was innocently just poked my head in to see what she was doing and say, hey. And she was sitting on the floor at 14 playing with Barbies. And she looked up at me in horror and said, you better not tell anybody. And I was like, what's wrong with playing with Barbies? Okay, that you like your Barbies. But she perceived herself as too old to be engaged in that behavior. So the earlier a girl matures, they're maybe faced with feeling like they should leave behind childlike things when they're not really ready to do that. So they're getting taller, they're getting more feminine in their appearance, they're attracting the attention of older boys, which is usually to their parents' horror. And in the book Reviving Ophelia, which is in the instructor office link, is a book you could read for extra credit. It's a wonderful book on the pressures on adolescent girls. And one of the girls tells a poignant story that the writer interviews that she was ready for the attention of boys as she became more feminine in her appearance. She said what she wasn't ready for and what was very destructive to her was the attention from older men, that they began looking at her differently and treating her differently. I'm imagining flirtations. And she said these men who she had respected and looked up to as father figures were now demonstrating their inability to keep their eyes to themselves. In a sense, that's the way I would characterize it. So their self-esteem can take a hit. Their academics can take a hit as they turn their attentions towards things other than school. Late maturation for boys can be difficult. We look at this boy in red here, behind this young man here. We can imagine maybe he wishes that his voice would change or stop cracking, or that he could grow a beard, or that he would get taller and more muscular so that coaches would be interested in him. So they're not usually the first picked for sports. Their status they might feel that their status is falling off, so their self-esteem can begin to take a hit. They're maybe friend-zoned in the dating world much more easily than their early maturing peers. However, their academics possibly go up because they're focused in on that more than extracurriculars. Late maturation for girls, often their status might take a hit because they're still in their own perception little girls and engaged in little girl things and are left out of their more rapidly maturing peers' conversations. They're less often targeted for dating, which parents love. I hoped that for my daughter, that we could delay that as long as possible. But generally their academics do better. Because of the many pressures on females, one of the things that we see as an especially dangerous but common occurrence would be the development of eating disorders, especially in females, but also in males. So you can read the prevalence rates. 1,680,000 people suffer from eating disorders in America every year. There's frequent overlap. Anorexia nervosa, which is the self-starvation disorder, can overlap quickly with bulimia, where the girl eats, the person eats and then purges. Crash dieting is not the same thing as anorexia nervosa, though it can turn into that. Anorexia is defined as refusing to eat and disregarding the effect that it's having on one's body. So as the person becomes more skin and bones and begins dropping weight, they're denying that they're reaching their goal, and it becomes addictive as a coping mechanism. They refuse to eat and therefore refuse to eat more and more and more. So you notice that 60% of all cases are diagnosed in girls between the age of 15 and 19. And most of these girls are judged by their peers as intelligent and successful. They have it all. And so the question is often, why would she or he engage in that behavior? Well, it's a psychological disorder that used as a coping mechanism. And then bulimia, binging on large quantities of food and purging through the use of vomiting or laxative abuse. Recently, a binge eating disorder has been also identified as prevalent among adolescents. Binge eating, similar to binge drinking, would be a person who copes with stress by binging on large quantities of food and feeling that they're out of control, that they can't stop that behavior. I'm going to pause here, and I'll begin part 3 with some of the proposed causes for these psychological disorders.